Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to cover all the home teams. We'll go heavy New Orleans Pelicans, heavy New Orleans Saints. We'll talk the LSU Tigers and Tulane Green Wave, and of course, your phone calls as well. Great panel for you tonight. First time on the show, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports joins us, along with my good friend Scott Alexander of WLAE-TV, and we'll tell you more about that as we go forward. And Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us. Great to have you back in New Orleans. For folks that don't know a little bit about you, tell us a little bit about your background, and I know this is home for you.
Yes, this is certainly home. I graduated from LSU back in 2011, started my broadcast career in Joplin, Missouri, made my way to WAFB-TV in Baton Rouge, and then found my way back home to Fox 8 WVUE, started there last October, and it's really great to be back.
Right. Now, a Slidell native?
Slidell native, Slidell High Tiger.
There you go. And of course, you guys do a great job over at Fox 8. Wall-to-wall programming. Why don't you go ahead and hype a little bit for us?
Yeah, we have a lot of great shows over there, especially in football season right now. We're running strong with the final play, and we'll have a lot of great stuff for you coming up this Sunday. We talk Saints, of course, Pelicans, as we'll get into here, and some LSU football with the recent hires and Jabbar Jaluka, New Orleans native, who I got the chance to catch up with yesterday.
Yep, no doubt. Scott, welcome back to the show, and congratulations on your new show here on WLAE. Tell the folks a little bit about it, if you would.
I was going to tell you, it's good to be home, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was gone for 25 years, and I came back 3 years ago, and I can't wait to stay for a long time, but it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
As far as me, I'm with you now.
Yeah.
I did my first show right here on WLAE on Tuesday night. It's going to actually replay tonight if it's Thursday night you're watching, 10 o'clock tonight. But it's sports and entertainment, and I wanted to have a little mix of local, national sports with some music. You know, I have a three-piece jazz band led by Kermit Ruffin's old drummer, Derek Smoker Freeman, and he's got his band, the MFG. We had E.T., the lead guy from Dirty Dozen Brass Band in, but the guests are going to be rolling. I mean, listen, we started with a couple of great cornerbacks, current and past. Jabari Greer was on the show. Delvin Breaux was on the show. Tim Brando was live from the Duke, North Carolina game. We also had Lions Yelling from WWL. Next week, we already got Ricky Jackson, Deuce McAllister, Dale Brown, Jake Madison. So I'm going to bring some local, national, and, of course, our Saints heroes. I'm loving it. But still doing the Pelicans and Saints websites for Scout.com. You know, I left ESPN Radio, focusing more on that. I did 7 stories last night. PelicansPride.com and SaintsInsider.com, all part of Scout. So I'm having fun. I appreciate all the help you and William did to get me on here, and it's all blaze and go. I'm ready to go.
Well, I tell you what, I caught the last half of the show because my DVR didn't fire the other day.
Right.
I happened to catch it live. I saw from the Delvin Breaux interview on. I got it locked and loaded for tonight. I'll be checking it out again, 6 o'clock on Tuesdays.
Yeah, I have a good crew, as you know. I mean, because it was the first show, a little nerves. I've been around a while, you know.
Believe me. You got to check it out. 6 o'clock on Tuesday nights. Replay every Thursday night right here on WLE at 10 p.m. Guys, welcome to the show. A lot to talk about tonight, and we'll start off with the New Orleans Pelicans. Such a disappointing season for this team right now, and it really got even more disappointing today when you look at again, not being able to move, especially expiring contracts at the trading deadline. The most they were able to do is bring in Jarnell Stokes, who was an unknown, I would say a D-League All-Star, or at least one that was part of the All-Star game. They get him from the Miami Heat, helping the Miami Heat get under the luxury tax threshold. They get $700,000 in cash, which again helps alleviate his salary. But it's unknown on whether he will even make this team or not or be on the roster. They give up a highly protected second-round pick. There's more than likely that the Heat will never see that second-round pick when it's all said and done. But at the same time, nothing else. Ryan Anderson didn't get moved. Eric Gordon did not get moved. A lot of that has to do with predicated on some injuries and, of course, the asking price, what the Pelicans were asking for Ryan Anderson. But, guys, I've been on this tirade for a couple days now on my radio show, and as a New Orleanian, as a basketball fan, as somebody that again talks about sports on a daily basis in our city, I'm frustrated with what's going on in Airline Drive. I feel like this franchise, the New Orleans Pelicans, has become the stepchild to the New Orleans Saints. This situation with splitting the personnel between the Saints and the Pelicans, overlapping, has, I believe, hurts them. Most franchises, even if they're under the same umbrella, would never do that. That's something that needs to change. And ultimately, this continuity situation they went in with this season without upgrading the roster was fool's gold. They went into a situation last year where Oklahoma City was injured, but yet they didn't feel like they needed to upgrade this roster to be able to move up or possibly make sure they would be the 8th seed this year. Injuries has hurt them. There's no doubt about it. But that's been the theme of this team for a long, long time. And I've said it before, and I'll say it right now on this show as I've said it on my radio show. I think it's time for Tom Benson to do one of two things. Either he is going to get a general manager in the mode of a Jim Finks, where he comes in and takes over the basketball operations, where he's the guy, he knows basketball, and you separate it from the New Orleans Saints once and for all, or sell the team to local interest. It's not fair to the Pelicans. It's not fair to Pelican fans to have them as the stepchild to the Saints, and you are on borrowed time right now. Anthony Davis is starting that Supermax contract next year. You got about 3 seasons to get your act together and be in the Western Division Finals, or at least bidding for a championship, or he's gone. And I'll say it right now. If he's gone, the Pelicans are probably not far behind. People are not showing up to the arena now. People are not watching the games on TV. They just came out with the latest ratings. They show the bottom has dropped down on the ratings in terms of people that are putting eyes on the Pelicans every night. And I'm frustrated, and I know that the fan base is frustrated by what's going on in Airline Drive. I'll take you first, Chris. That's a mouthful on my part. Your thoughts on the New Orleans Pelicans and the state of the Pelicans right now.
Well, I would agree. I believe that it is an extremely frustrating situation, especially when you look at how this season began. And the buzz was arguably the biggest it's been with an NBA team in New Orleans. Maybe not even barring the Chris Paul years. You know, I think everybody was excited. They get Anthony Davis re-signed. They've finally look like they've got some pieces. It looks like they're going to be healthy. All of a sudden, Tyreke Evans, the bottom's pulled out when he can't start the season. Drew Holiday starts on a minutes restriction. And that's some of the bad luck of it. And you can't establish the continuity on defense. You can't establish, I think, what Alvin Gentry wanted to do on offense. The pace of play was slow, but then you start to get a little healthier. You know, you get January to come along. It looks like they finally take some steps forward. They have a winning record during the month of January, and then all of a sudden February starts. They start, 0-3. Tyreke Evans out for the rest of the year. It seems like any progress was made was hurt. They suffered their worst loss of the season against Oklahoma City on the road to go into the All-Star break, and it just kind of summed up the first half of the season, how frustrating it is. And you're right. I think people look to this trade deadline, and when you have contracts that you're able to move and you have so many teams that I believe were interested in Ryan Anderson and what you could have made happen there, I think people, more than anything, want to see progress. Fans want to see that something is happening there and that you're not just keeping Ryan Anderson in place for what seems like no reason, because his contract's going to expire and you get nothing for it.
Right.
So you want to hope that there's a bigger plan in the future. You want to hope that maybe there's something that says, we can bring Ryan back. We're able to sign him and match whoever, comes after him. And maybe you keep a great bench intact, because that's one thing they do have going for him right now. If Eric Gordon leaves, then you maybe have some money to play with and pull in a star or someone who can complement what they have now. But you just don't see it, because based on what happened at this trade deadline and what's happened in the past, and the lack of, I guess, initiative to really make some strong moves, what faith do you have that going forward they're going to do the right thing and really turn this team around? Couldn't
agree more. Scotty, you've been covering the NBA for a long time. Your thoughts on the state of the Pelicans?
I'm not sure where I should even start on this. I don't know if I should play devil's advocate first, because there are reasons in my mind maybe that we don't know what was actually offered for Ryan Anderson. We heard glimpses of the 3-way trade, Celtics getting Kevin Love, obviously Anderson going to Cleveland. And you got to look at the first rounders that were there. We don't know what was offered. I can assure you the 4th pick, which is, if it was right now, the Brooklyn pick they got in that whole Pearson-Garnett trades that Boston was stockpiling picks. If that was offered, yeah, they're taking the deal. But the 23rd, was that even offered? That's where they'd be right now, where Boston would be picking if the season ended today. I would think they would hopefully take that, But was it offered? And what else did you get for Ryan Anderson offer-wise? And like he said, Chris was talking about do you feel confident, even though he's going to test the mark, that he might be coming back? So my point is this: as far as Dell goes, a lot of people out there, and I'm not going to say I agree or disagree because I'm just going to watch from afar. He's a lame duck general manager,
Absolutely.
correct? So if you're Dell Demps and he does have power, and right now we don't know if Mickey Loomis is pulling this string and saying, hey, you can and can't do this. But if he does have power and he says, hey, I know the stats only tell us that with our record, 5% chance to get in the playoffs, being 6.5 down right now with 29 to go. But if you're Dell Demps and you're not getting a good value for the future, which is as a general manager, whether you're going to get fired or not, you're supposed to do what's good for the organization.
Sure.
However, what's to say they don't go 21-8? And, now you got this piece that everybody said might be a cancer. Tyreek, I'm not saying he's a cancer as a person, just the style of play he plays with this team. You get Eric Gordon back in a week. Maybe all of a sudden you get some flow. I'm just saying I'm looking from his side. 21-8 puts you at 41. Right now, playoffs is 500. Now, you got to hope those teams at least stay status quo. And if I'm Dell Demps, your chances to go in the playoffs with Ryan Anderson are much better than not. So unless you're getting that great deal, he's just going to say, let's roll it out there and see. I am frustrated that he didn't do more. I do like Jarnell Stokes, and I do believe Jarnell Stokes is a version of Kendrick Perkins when he could actually play basketball, and he's going to give you a toughness inside. He's a 6'9" guy, really about 6'8".
Right.
But he's a guy that it's tough, man. He's inside tough. Omar Ashik didn't give it to you, and that's what you were hoping for. And he's not going to give you the rim protecting, but he's going to give you a toughness where you go small ball, and he can score inside. You got him for nothing. Roll it right now and see, because if you weren't going to get that significant first rounder, what else were you expecting to get?
There were some rumors out there that the Pelicans wanted 2 first-rounders for Ryan Anderson. That's one of the reasons why the deal didn't get done.
Can't get done. How could you do that? You're going to mortgage. The guy could be gone in 2 months.
Well, if you're the team, the other trade partner, knowing you're not going to be able to possibly bring him back next year, you can't do that.
Right.
But there are enough teams out there that are contending and would like to have seen a Ryan Anderson on that team that a deal could have been made. Now, was it a good deal? Do you just make a deal for the sake of making a deal at this point? Here's the frustrating part. You don't have to wait to the trading deadline to make deals. They've had all season long to figure out if Tyreek Evans was going to fit before he went out with again, the multiple knee injuries. No movement there. Eric Gordon was playing fairly well at one point, even though, again, you were saying we're looking for February. Things are going to get better in February. They got better in January. They didn't get better in February. Was there an opportunity to be able to move Eric Gordon before then? The Amir Sheik deal. I mean, when Greg Monroe is begging to come back home, okay, and is literally through his agent, even now, his agent putting out feelers saying the New Orleans Pelicans are talking to the Bucks about the possibility of bringing him in, but they don't want to give up Drew Holiday. Well, look, I love Drew Holiday too, but Drew Holiday's been often injured, and we don't know when that stress fracture is going to rear its ugly head again. To bring a guy in like that who will be box office for you and also, again, will give you the center that you need, I just think it's been one bad move after another, one miscalculation after another by this team, which again, has frustrated the fan base to the point that they don't care anymore.
And here's the other thing. You've got to be thinking for the future. If, like Scott was saying, if Dell Demps believe that not making a move and keeping Ryan Anderson as best for the playoffs, what does the playoffs get you? This team isn't going to be a 6 seed. This team's not going to be a 5 seed. This is going to be an 8 seed, 7 seed at the very best if they have a spectacular second half of the season. You're facing the Warriors, who are playing unbelievably right now, will probably break a win record in the league, or you're playing the Spurs, who, if it weren't for the Warriors, would be having the praises sung about them because they still have under 10 losses. So I think you've got to think that even if you make the playoffs, what kind of win is that? You get swept. You want to make the move that's going to help this team long term, and like you said, keep your superstar happy, keep Anthony Davis happy, and make some progress.
Can I say this about that?
Sure.
Because Anthony Davis, you made a great point right there. Anthony Davis' body language has been bad. And it's listen, he's a young kid. He's 22, and things were expected, and they didn't go that way. Hey, listen, the 5 years with injury problems, it's like the definition of insanity. You keep doing things that, that have been driving you crazy, and you still do them. Well, that goes to your point. You're keeping players that have proven they can't stay healthy.
Yes.
And that has been the ultimate detriment of this team. Now, right now, you're talking about Anthony Davis without Ryan Anderson right now. I'm just telling you, he's 22. You're talking about body language we've seen the previous month. You're talking about going on a 7-22 run down the thing, which you would without Ryan Anderson. I'm saying this guy might not just come back and show up. He might just sit out the old-fashioned way and demand a trade. Right now, I'm thinking you got a fighter's chance. You're not gonna go 22-7 like I said before. But my point is that just show me some better basketball. Show me the Alvin Gentry basketball that you were promised. And right now is your best hope because Tyreek's out. You're going to have two guys that can spot up and shoot when Gordon comes back and Ryan Anderson. And maybe you get the fan base kind of energized again. But you're not doing it without Ryan Anderson right now. And I agree, you want assets, but they're just taking that little shot in the dark and seeing if they weren't getting the right offer, they're going to go with this.
Well, Scott, if I thought that there was a lottery shot, a Powerball shot of them making the playoffs, I'd be sitting here right now going, you did the best thing for the franchise in holding serve. I don't think there's a shot for them to go to the playoffs. I don't think they're going to eke in the back door on the 8th seed. I don't think the teams are going to collapse and they're going to be on the 7th seed. You haven't proved it all season long. You went into this season with again, the thought of continuity with an often injured team, a team that was predisposed to injury. During the tenure here, Monty Williams, doesn't matter, Dell Demps, or even Alvin Gentry, the team that you put together for the most part has been often injured. Your core has been injured. But yet you did nothing in the offseason to be able to upgrade this franchise. That was your first mistake. And then again, hoping and waiting that maybe this team was going to catch fire, maybe there was going to be some continuity, maybe they were going to hit the system. All of a sudden, boom, you're at the halfway mark of the season and nothing. You're not there. So in my opinion, you're playing for the lottery right now, okay? And at this point, when you have assets and you're at the trading deadline and you're in a position where ultimately you need to be able to get something for these assets, not to let them walk with nothing. I think sometimes you got to make a deal. I know a bad deal will get as much criticism for us in the media than a good deal, but considering the circumstances of let them walk away for nothing or get something for them, I would have liked to see them get something for them because I don't think playoffs is in the future.
No, I don't either. And they're in such limbo land, Chris. I mean, they're like the 6th worst team record-wise, so you're not going to get one of those top 3 picks most likely. I mean, there's a small chance you could jump up there, and they're too far from the playoffs. So this is the absolute worst place
spot you could be in.
That's the worst part about it is you're exactly right in the fact that this team, we've seen them play well enough to win games. I don't know if winning too many games is exactly what you want to do. You don't want to see a team tank.
No.
You don't want the fans don't want to see that. That obviously isn't going to help any player attitudes or any situations like that. But you're right. It's limbo right now. It's extremely frustrating. And Anthony Davis has talked about it. They've got to decide what kind of team they want to be. The best thing maybe is for them to. You've got to keep that effort up, but there's just. Up or down, there's not too many ways to go right now.
They do play Philly to start the second half. Now, that's not a gimme, but it's a start, hopefully.
Well, guys, with the exception, and I've talked about this on my radio show, with the exception of with this regime, and I'm talking Dell Demps in charge, with the exception, and look, he came in, and I was a Dell Demps fan for a long time because I felt that he came in kind of handcuffed. George Shinn doesn't have any money to spend. All of a sudden, you're getting Dell Demps on the cheap. You're getting Monty Williams on the cheap. And then you're hoping that again, they're going to turn into great coaches, great general managers. In terms of finding guys that are bench guys, Dell Demps has done a great job. Going to Europe, finding guys there, man, that has been his forte. But that's also stuff scouts do, not general managers. Bradley Hamburger said it on this program about a year and a half ago. Dell Demps puts together a basketball team like he's a fantasy basketball, has a fantasy basketball team. That's how he's put this NBA team together. I mean, tell me what has worked, honestly. What splash has worked for the most part? Ryan Anderson has worked out, okay? $8.5 million, great get. That was one of the few that's worked out. Anthony Davis fell in your lap. Other than that, Drew Holiday was injured when he got here. He cost you 2 lottery picks. You gave up a Robin Lopez who was making $5 million a year, and you've been looking for that guy that can be the stopper in the middle ever since he left. And you got Tyreek Evans, who doesn't fit your system. You went out, you got Omer Sheik for a number 1 pick. He doesn't work out, so what do? You extend him. 4 years, $44 million guaranteed, 5 years, $58 million. And oh, by the way, every single deal the Pelicans tried to do during this season has been a deal with Omer Sheik as a throw-in on the deal. You want such and such, you got to take a Sheik as well. So it's been one era after another, one miscalculation after another, and it's gotten to the point now where if you don't have a winning basketball team in New Orleans, people don't pay attention. They move on, and this fan base has moved on.
I think you're exactly right with the fantasy basketball reference there. It's just a lineup that doesn't fit. The injuries haven't helped. You've thrown out more than 20 probably starting lineups by now, and
24
different starting lineups by now, and so it's hard to get that continuity and get what you're looking for. But we haven't seen it, and you can tell that Gentry's a little frustrated too. The bad luck's been all around. Even at worst, you have Tyreek. If you're not able to trade and remove him, there was talks of Tyreek and Ashiq going to Cleveland for Kevin Love. Would have been spectacular just to end the season like that.
Until
even
Evans
if you
gets
don't
injured.
re-sign Kevin Love. But Evans gets injured, so not only do you not have him who, he doesn't necessarily fit the pace of this offense, but at the very worst, he could give you 15 points a game. You don't have him to trade, and you don't have him on the floor. So it's just the bad luck that's plaguing this
Gordon
season.
breaks his finger right before the deadline. Tariq goes down. I know Gordon's an expiring and Tariq's not, but the fact is those are two guys you might have been able to package, and nobody's wanting them now. You're throwing Ashiq out?
Right.
That's not attractive. Maybe last year he could give you some rim protection and rebounds. This year, except for a couple games, he's not giving you even that in the offense. We don't need to talk about.
Right. I've mentioned it on this program. I've mentioned it on my radio show. I'm one of the few that continues to harp this. They're on both the Saints and the Pelican side. They have to take a hard look at the medical staff. You can't continue to bring in individuals, players that have pre-existing injuries that you can't figure out, having guys that have an injury and then they're misdiagnosed. Tyreek Evans, 3 surgeries this year. This should have been dealt with. Quincy Pondexter doesn't even get on the court for you this year. Again, we're going to scope it. He's going to work it out. Next thing you know, he doesn't even make it. All this is a detriment to both franchises, and there needs to be a hard look at what's going on out on Airline Drive when it comes to the medical staff. But guys, even with Anthony Davis here, how many players do you think are begging to come to New Orleans? Let's face it, this is a lottery team. Call it whatever you want, whatever last year was, but this is a lottery team. Even with cap space next year, how many players can you woo to New Orleans to play with Anthony Davis? Guys want to play on winning teams, even because they're going to get paid either way with the way the salary cap is. I'll go back to Greg Monroe. He is the first player I've ever seen since maybe Pistol Pete Maravich with the New Orleans Jazz that wanted to come to New Orleans, wanted to be here, but yet you ignore it. And now you're in a situation, as I mentioned, as I had Sean Devaney from the Sporting News on my radio show today, said, look, don't put this on the back burner yet, because maybe when the season ends, you may see Greg Monroe here. Hey, that would be nice. But the problem is you chose to re-sign Omer Ashiq for 5 years, $58 million, instead of getting a Greg Monroe for 3 years and $50 million. And now if you are to get Monroe to come here, you got to give up assets.
I think you've got to show that you're willing to make the moves and willing to make the big moves to win and to want to get better, and we haven't seen that. Like we've mentioned, sitting on these contracts and sitting on these players because you're afraid to make a core move, it's not exactly attracting guys. I think, Anthony Davis is enough if you could. Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, Ryan Anderson. If you can keep Ryan Anderson, that's enough, I think, to draw in another talent, and this team could be a playoff team. I think that's a nice core, but there's a lot of that has to happen in order for that to happen next year.
I don't even know where to go with this anymore. I'm just kind of already thinking about the other teams in the NBA and how they're going to compete.
Right.
I don't think it's a lottery team in the sense that, hey, I think it's a 500 team, because it's a 1-11 start. They're a 500 team. They go on a little roll, but you're right. They're where they don't want to be, in limbo land. You're not good enough to get the early pick, and you're not good enough to go to the playoffs. And do you feel at least a little bit bad for Alvin Gentry? Because think about his injury situation he's dealt with from the moment he's gotten here.
Hey, Monty's had dealt with that as well. But I will tell you what, for those that out there that again, when this power struggle that went on between the Pelicans front office with, again, Monty Williams ultimately losing out and Dell Demps winning the power struggle, Monty being dismissed, Dell Demps getting at least another year to turn this thing around. We can look back and say now, hindsight, Monty Williams squeezed everything he could out of this team. And, I could feel sorry for Alvin Gentry, but at the same time, Alvin Gentry's got to speak up. He's the guy that came in with the film and the charts and said, this is what I can do for you if you hire me, if I got Anthony Davis. You don't need to make any moves. I got this core. We can do something. Again, I think the fan base is waning on that as well.
Yeah, and you're right. Gentry came in with that confidence, and they bought it. They thought and look, maybe he could have made a difference, but even going back before the season started and the injuries, they weren't even really healthy during training camp. And it goes back to continuity and being able to install an offense and knowing who you're playing next to, and knowing what's going on out there on the floor. These guys don't have it. You see plays being run wrong in critical situations. It's frustrating all around, and I think it's just built up to a boiling point at this point.
And then I'll say this. How can the general manager of a franchise that was expected to be a playoff team not meet the New Orleans media? I mean, he'll talk to a national media member. He'll talk to the hometown broadcast team, but yet he won't talk to the New Orleans media on what's going on. At some point, you got to stand up and you got to face the fan base. Let them know what's going on. And I think part of the problem with the Pelicans right now is on Airline Drive, they have an NFL mentality. You cannot run an NBA franchise with an NFL mentality. In the NFL, you want to give a coach 3-4 years to kind of get things going, get his system in place, get guys that have come through the draft that ultimately could come in and contribute. In the NBA, I'm sorry, within a year, year and a half, if you get to the next All-Star break and you're not turning this thing around, most of the time, ownership is saying, see you later. The Pelicans have chosen, the Bensons have chosen to stand pat, and in doing so, they're losing their fan base. 15,000 people stepped up and bought season tickets in the offseason. Renewals have gone out now. They're going to be hard-pressed to get half of that coming back, not to mention, again, the games that are on TV now that people are just ignoring, as I mentioned earlier. It is a very frustrating time out there, and it's time for whether it's Mr. Benson, Mickey Loomis, whoever's going to be in charge of this franchise to wake up and to realize that it's happened once with Baron Davis, it happened twice with Chris Paul. If we see Anthony Davis as he gets into the second or third year of this Supermax deal, trying to push his way out of New Orleans, I'll say it again, the Pelicans are not going to be far behind. And that would be a shame. I love the NBA. It crushed me when the New Orleans Jazz left back in 1979, and I would hate to see this team end up elsewhere simply because of the mismanagement or, again, treating the Pelicans like the stepchild of Airline Drive.
Crushed me as well, by the way. I cried for about a month, and when Pistol Pete, they went to Utah, I was like, oh man, 13 years old, 14 years old. Yeah, I mean, listen, something's got to change. I don't know what it is, but I'd like to see some, who's making the decision? Loomis, Demps? Because right now, I don't feel it's Demps anymore. I feel Demps is bringing decisions he'd like to make to Loomis, and as opposed to being able to pull that trigger right now. And it's tough being a lame duck guy when I think most people say if he doesn't make a run right now, he's probably gone.
Well, the national NBA correspondents will tell you that they don't know who's making the decision.
No.
That they're talking to agents around the NBA, and agents are telling them that they believe that Dell Demps has to turn and ask Mickey Loomis, is it okay to make a move? And imagine that. Mickey Loomis is in the middle of trying to figure out what's going on with the Saints, getting under the salary cap, negotiating deals, renegotiating deals, trying to figure out what you're going to do with Drew Brees. And now he's got to turn his attention to what's going on with the Pelicans. Guys, it's just not working.
Yeah, and you can't have that kind of mismanagement at the top if that's what's going on. Demps comes from a lineage where if he does have the freedom to make the moves that he would want to make, you might have faith in that, but if he's got to turn to Loomis and that's what's holding up things, that's what's holding up deals, holding up moves being made that could help this team get better, then that's obviously a huge problem, and it starts at the top a lot of the time.
I've had two national correspondents on my program this week on my radio show. Both have said that the dynamics of the Pelicans front office has changed, and Dell Demps no longer has the autonomy that he once had.
Right.
And that's not good when you're talking about having to turn to a guy who made his bones in the NFL. No disrespect, Mickey Loomis. What do you know about the NBA? Okay. At the end of the day, you got to go out and you got to use the format that Benson used when he bought the New Orleans Saints back in 1985. Find yourself the Jim Finks of the NBA. Put him in charge and let him turn this franchise around.
I could just say from my experience, 8 years being an NFL and NBA agent, more NBA, but those are two different animals, and they're not even close to being the same. For a guy to try to do both jobs, I know he's got help on both sides.
Sure he does.
It's impossible. It just is. I mean, you have too much, especially this time of year when decisions have to be made on deadlines and then free agency, like you said, you're going upstream.
No, it really are. Now, Scott, with that said, today was the NBA trading deadline. Some moves were made. How do you think this affects the league going forward?
Well, there's no splash. Everybody wanted the Kevin Love. Everybody wanted the big ones. But I think there's a couple out there that really did. In some trades, it helps both people. Sometimes you eliminate a cancer, in that case with Markieff Morris, but they showcased him last few weeks. And he started the last 8 games after being in the doghouse with the fight with Archie Goodwin, throwing the towel at Hornacek. He averaged 21 points. LeBron, like 7, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. And now he's going to Washington. So they got rid of a cancer. They got a first-round pick that, as long as it's not top 9, they're going to get. But Washington, who looks like the loser, I think could win. They've been dying since Paul Pierce left, right? Bradley Beal has only played about half the games, and now he's back. Now you have a nice front court if Morris has the good attitude. Let me go back to Morris 1 second. Marcus Morris, his brother, was traded after him. He took less money to stay with his twin brother.
Yes.
They even share a bank account. They traded him. Listen, you have to be professional. You can't act like a baby, but there are some background to why he's not happy. He goes to Washington. You're getting Beal back. You got, obviously John Wall, and then Gortat. I like their chances of making a run. And the other side, the Clippers, I like what they did. They brought in Jeff Green. He's at least a solid citizen. He's going to help the madhouse clubhouse that they got going right now, guys that don't like each other, and you ship out a problem. Lance Stevenson, if there's one place that he can be kept in, it's with Zach Randolph and Gasol. Maybe they make a run with that. Jeff Green was really something that really wasn't doing a whole lot for them, so I like that. But I like Pistons. Tobias Harris, getting him for really not much, and I think he's solid. And they got Monte Eunice, who's coming back from injury. He's only played 14 games. They had no bench.
Right.
They were the only team that had a completely healthy starting 5 and one that really played well, kind of like Portland did 2 years ago. No one was injured. Well, now they got solid guys off the bench and didn't give up anybody except Brandon Jennings off the bench, who was unhappy anyway. So I like what they did. I like what the Clippers did. Clippers are still, if this was any other year and there wasn't a Golden State, one of the greatest teams, they would have a puncher's chance against San Antonio. Right now, they're playing for 3rd at best.
See, I like Detroit's deal.
Yeah.
You give me those 2 guys coming to the New Orleans Pelicans. I know there was a lot of talk. Tobias Harris was at least in the conversation with the New Orleans Pelicans. I think you walk away with those 2 guys, Monte Eunice and Harris. I think you do a pretty good job at the trading deadline. Those are guys that end up working for you if you're the New Orleans Pelicans. That's why I think a lot of the fan base, as you look at social media, as you listen, that people are upset by what's going on right now.
Yeah, they are. And going back to kind of what Scott said there, you want to see that your team's making the right moves to get better or at least try something different. I like what Memphis did. I think Lance Stevenson is a nice addition there, and I think it is tough in the West. You're looking at San Antonio and Golden State, and it's very hard to see anybody even taking maybe 2 games off of them in the playoffs. The East with the Wizards, I think that's a situation where the East is still a little bit open. I know the Cavs are there at the top, but
no one else. I mean, honestly, it's open
things
after
haven't
that.
even been the same with the Cavs.
Right.
It's been a little bit of a turmoil situation. Losing David Blatt, Tyronn Lue, verdict's still kind of out there. I think the East is open, and I think the Wizards can at least push into the playoffs, maybe make something happen. We saw them make a strong run last year, so it at least moves them forward, which is more than for what we can say for
One
the
last
You
thing,
get the
though.
final word
The
before we go to
Pistons
break.
got one more thing. They got Marcus Thornton.
Yeah.
More firepower off the bench. Not to be underestimated. He's not going to be a starter, but
No.
that dude can put up 20 in a quarter like that. So they solidified the bench in an East that's kind of wide open. It wouldn't be a shock to me if they got to the Eastern Conference Finals.
There are still some New Orleans fans that are still upset that Marcus Thornton was moved from the New Orleans Hornets, no doubt. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night with our live broadcast right here on WLAE-TV at 6 p.m. There's a rebroadcast every Friday night, 10 p.m. right here on WLAE, and also on the Pelican Sports Network in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets at 9 p.m. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Scott Alexander of WLAE-TV, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports are our guests. We'll be coming back, going straight to the phone lines. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. WLAE is currently looking for partners to underwrite this program and other programs on our station. Underwriting on WLAE is affordable, brings exposure to your cause or company, and helps support our nonprofit mission of providing television programs that educate, inform, and inspire the viewers of Greater New Orleans and Southeast Louisiana.
If you are interested in learning about program underwriting on WLAE, please contact us at 504-830-3703.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Great panel for you tonight. Scott Alexander, WLAE-TV, and Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports, both New Orleanians. Got a triple play New Orleanians here tonight. 866-3200 is the phone number. Wide open on the phone lines for you. Guys, before we go to the New Orleans Saints, quickly on the LSU Tigers. Oh, man, I tell you what. One step forward, two steps backwards. You know, they're on a roll. They've beaten Alabama already in Tuscaloosa. They're coming home. Last night, you figure with again a national TV audience that you know they're gonna put the bow on this thing going into the SEC tournament with just a few games left, and once again they stubbed their toe. Inability to stop the guards, couldn't make free throws. Just a frustrating night for the LSU Tigers, which again have got to get some continuity. As it looks like they're going to be a tournament team, but you got to get some continuity if you're not going to be one and done going into the tournament.
Yeah, and this was a chance for them to really build momentum. You come off a big win against Texas A&M, a revenge game there. Then you've got Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, teams that either beaten once or have losing records. That's a time for them to take some steps forward, build that momentum. And the really big thing is you close the season with those final few games, including Florida and Kentucky, two games that are not going to be easy, and you want to build some momentum in there. You don't want to go in there guessing or, you know, not with the confidence of coming off a couple of wins. Unfortunately, it's become the same recipe for when they lose. Craig Victor gets in foul trouble. The offense struggles. They struggle to get anything going in the half court. They missed a lot of opportunities last night, missed a lot of free throws. It's become a recipe that's not going to win you games. You know, you want to blame Johnny Jones, but at the same time, he can't be out there making free throws. True. And the basketball IQ doesn't seem like it's there sometimes. This team has been so Jekyll and Hyde with the way that they play so well at times, and then other times it is just very frustrating to watch.
I have loved, obviously, the addition, bringing Hornsby back from injury, and obviously having Victor. That was needed. They were going to be below 500 without them. No doubt. They've been a good team. 9-3 going into this game. I tweeted right before the game, this one scares me. Bama, the overconfidence because you beat them at their place fairly easily on the heels of them beating an undefeated South Carolina team. So they came in thinking, okay, we got this. We need to go forward. And I said, this one scares me. Bama's won 4 in a row. Avery Johnson's got them playing ball. They don't have a ton of talent, but they got 2 guys that can put the ball in the hoop. They showed it last night. I thought that he got out-coached last night, and I never say that about coaches. I'm just giving Avery a plug because he had those guys ready to play and hungry. And by the way, they're right now in the tournament, and LSU's on the bubble. LSU, I said before the SEC started, the tournament will take into account those guys missing early, but you have to go 12-6 to give them nothing to think about. 12-6 in conference, and it looked good going in last night, 9-3. Now you have to win 3 out of 5. Not that easy of a schedule to end, and maybe even have to win a game in the tournament. So that said, I do like the makeup of this team, and somebody nationally said it yesterday. He said, listen, I think it was Jay Williams. He said, listen, this is one team that I'll tell you, if you don't put them in, if you put them in either or, and that team that they're going up against, I guarantee you LSU is the team that has a much better chance to make a run of the Final Four and not whoever else you're going to compare them to. So that said, I like it if they can get some consistency.
And here's the thing. They don't have to do a ton to get in the tournament. Like you said, you just got to give the committee a reason to put you in. They want to see Ben Simmons. They want to see Blakeney. They want to see this team because, like you said, they can make a run. They can upset some teams. They can be a team that really draws viewers and a team that you would talk about a lot, but you've got to give them a reason. You can't just limp your way through the SEC and expect that bid to come because you have Ben Simmons. You've got to give them a reason to have that vote of confidence to put you in.
Let's head to the phone lines, 866-3200. And I'll add, you got a whole serve on home court, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, you really do.
And that was one area they had been very good.
Right.
They were undefeated. I mean, in the conference, it is.
No doubt. Let's go to Greg in Houma. Hey, Greg, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for calling tonight.
Yeah, I know you haven't really touched on the Saints, but I have a question here.
It's wide open, my man. Go ahead.
You know, back in 2009, Sean Payton's strategy was to outscore everybody. So why not just draft heavy on offense and just do it again? Because I think we're more than 1 or 2 players away from our defense. And I'll hang up and see what the panel says.
Thanks so much. You also had an opportunistic defense, which again made up for a lot of the deficiencies that they had on that defense, not to mention the high scoring. Guys, I think whether it's free entry of the draft, with the exception of the guard position, maybe a wide receiver late in the draft, it's got to be defense, defense, defense.
I think it has to be defense. That has to be a central focus. But I do like what he said, and that is an opinion that I've had before, that, yeah, the popular first-round pick is going to be maybe an Ashawn Robinson from Bama or a Shaq Lawson from Clemson if he makes it that far. But you wouldn't mind seeing a big-name receiver, a Laquan Treadwell.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah, I mean, because look,
that's the one guy I'd be tempted. If he's there, it'd be tough because they get no separation. As improved as Cooks is, as improved as Snead was, they don't get a lot of separation. I'm with you on defense.
I love him
but
too.
That's the only guy.
I do. I love him too. But I just think there's such a deficiency on defense that you just have to go in that direction.
you got to go pass rusher for certainly. I think if Keenan Lewis is healthy, you've got Delvin Breaux, you've got Keenan Lewis. Those are your guys, and I think that can make up for a lot of issues that you saw when Keenan Lewis wasn't healthy. I think Jairus Byrd, if he's playing with the defense around him that has some semblance of a defense, I think he can. I don't know if you live up to that contract because that's outrageous, but I think that there's improvement there. I think that there are some pieces in place, but I think you need a pass rusher. It starts there. You obviously saw the effect that it had in the Super Bowl and what they were able to do to Cam Newton. You've seen it across the league, and you watch the playoffs. And if you watch the Saints a lot this year, and then you watch the playoffs, you're like, man, these teams can play some defense.
Yes.
And that's what's going to make a huge difference. But I wouldn't at all be upset if they spent a first, second, third round pick on a piece that can help that offense. I think you can get quality offensive lineman, quality guard mid-round. But, if there's another option for Drew Brees, why not let him be the best he can be? I think he's still in his position and at an age where he can do a lot for this offense, and he will, but you've got to give him the pieces.
We're fortunate right now. Defense is so strong at the top of the draft. I'm going to say this real quick. I was fortunate enough to do games with Tim Barrendo this fall, and I got to see Agba a couple times up close from Oklahoma State. He is a disruptor. Disruptive playmakers. I did Oregon game with Buckner. He's a player. You got Bullard at Florida. They have players out there, even Kamdichi at Ole Miss. And I don't mind an Ashawn Robinson because you need those guys, but they fumbled a lot. Jonathan Stevens in the past. We saw the USC guy. They fumbled. I think if you get a proven guy, you're not going to get Joey Bosa because that's obviously too early, but they have a good group that you can definitely, one of those guys will be available at 12.
Well, guys, and I'll say this, when you look at the Saints' needs and you look at the depth of the draft, they coincide. I mean, it's really kind of lucky for the Saints this year that, again, the needs that they have or where the strength of the draft is. So they're going to be able to get some quality players. But the problem is we saw it last year. Man, when you're relying on rookies, it's up and down. One week they're playing at an all-pro level. The next week they're playing like they're sophomores in college, and that was part of the problem last year. Anthony at times played well. Kakaha at times played well, and then there was a drop-off. And hopefully, again, year two, we're going to see these guys. Now the game will be a little bit slower. They're going to be a little bigger, stronger, faster, and we'll have a chance to maybe to see the fruits of the labor of having so many young players play last year. But now you're looking at, because of salary cap restraints, and look, we know the Saints are going to have some money under the cap to be able to go out there and make some type of moves. But let's face it, they roll snake eyes when they're in the free agency. You've got to do what the other teams have done, what the Saints have not done really since their first draft. You've got to build through the draft, and this is a critical draft for this team. They have to hit on their draft choices. Whether it's going to be a wide receiver that's going to be a game breaker, the pass rusher, the disruptive guy that's going to be in the middle, or again, a weak side linebacker. It's got to happen, and these guys have got to come in. And I've said it before, this has got to be an 06 draft. Not the draft you had last year where I think you've got some solid players that are going to contribute for a long time, but you got to have some guys that are going to be the best at their positions in this draft. Those are the guys you got to find, the Jari Evans, the Marcus Colstons. Those are the guys you got to get in this draft.
I think they know that in Peyton's postseason presser when he talked for more than an hour. That's what he spent a lot of the time talking about and addressing it. They know now, you can't always tell right away when you've hit or miss with a rookie especially, but they know now, especially in free agency and with this draft, they have to draft better. Like you said, the emphasis is on that. I think they know that they have to go out and get the players that can make a difference and that can immediately put some results out there. Now, I do think, like you mentioned, guys like Stephon Anthony, Holi Kakaha, the positivity that they
Williams
showed.
possibly. He didn't play at all this year, but that's a guy that's a potential first rounder.
You could say Davis Tull too, because again, you're hoping that he's going to be a pass rusher. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Just the positivity that they showed is a step forward, and you hope that production continues. A lot of times with those guys, you may not be able to tell how good they're going to be for a year or two, but I think that certainly steps in the right direction.
Great point.
Let's head to the phone lines. Emil, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Emil, you with us?
Yes. Hey, Eric. Hey, Scott.
Good to have you on the show.
How you been, man?
All right. I just got a quick multiple choice question and then my comments. Are we a sportsman paradise, a sportsman paradox, or a sportsman paraplegia?
That's our
now,
boy,
in the
Emil.
local NFL, NBA, and NCAA teams, we have noted Lamborghini classics, namely Drew Brees, Anthony Davis, Ben Simmons, Leonard Fournette. For whatever reason, within the state of insanity, which is located somewhere between the states of confusion, inebriation, and bordered by the state of Louisiana, the respective entities have, in their abundance of ineptitude, supplied these pride jalopies with junkyard auto parts. One can't cut corners from a circle, nor does a shortcut in quality will result in a shortcut to disaster. Granted, a strong foundation is vital for any organization to thrive, but progressive, out-the-box mentality is needed, not Jurassic pretzel logic. And I always ask the question, New Orleans, Louisiana, are you professional or amateur? You're on the clock.
Rack 'em.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emil. That was a long one. I know there's a question there somewhere, but we appreciate the phone call.
Well, they're paradox. The one in the middle is the one I like.
Right. Well, I thought a little bit of all three, in my opinion.
Right.
To Tom in New Orleans. Hey, Tom, welcome to the show. Tom, are you with us? Okay, Tom is gone. Guys, Cam Jordan restructures his deal this week, gives the Saints about $4.8 million in cap relief. One of the things we can say about Mickey Loomis when it comes to structuring these contracts, there are always triggers in these different contracts that allow him to be able to utilize the contract to get under the cap to be able to manufacture more money. But on the flip side, it's also been the death nail for this team. Jari Evans, one of those guys that redid his contract, then took a pay cut, and then it got to the point where ultimately he's saying, wait a minute, I've come to the table every time for you. Now you want me to take another pay cut, I'm out. Now, Jari Evans is on the downside of his career. But Jari Evans is probably the best guard you had on this team. So there's a catch-22 when you're constantly manufacturing this money. Thank goodness they were able to do it. The hope is that they'll be able to do a few more so that ultimately there'll be at least players in free agency. The question now is Drew Brees. Loomis said this week that he has talked to Brees about an extension, but not to Tom Condon, his agent. Someone threw out 2017. Guys, I got to think if you're going to do a deal with Brees and it's going to be cap friendly, I'm thinking at least 3 years, maybe to 2018. I don't know if you want to get into 2019, but you've got to do at least a 3-year deal, right?
I would say so. I think that the issue and the question mark was previously, is he going to be around long enough healthily? Is he going to be able to produce long enough? I think with a healthy shoulder, if Drew Brees is clicking, we saw what he could do on one foot. I think there's no doubt he's still playing well. He's a smart enough quarterback. He's almost deceptively athletic. I hate using that term, but he is. No. He can go for his age. So I would have no problem with them extending him out 3 or 4 years.
It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. We've been doing it. We're doing it again with Cam Jordan. It's become a necessity now, and it might be for another year or two. It's been happening for 4 years, and that's why Drew Brees is in the position where you can't pay him $30 million, but he also backloaded stuff for you so you could help out a little bit. No, and now you, just like Jari Evans, now you're asking this guy not to get his full contract. I get it. They can't go in 1 year $30 million. It's just not going to happen. So you have to do something. Can you spread out 2 years enough? No. So it's going to have to be 3 years, and it's going to have to be something in the $20 million range and get him to agree. You'd love him to take the Tom Brady, hey, let's get everybody better. Let's play for $9 million. He's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. But the fact is I love what Cam Jordan did for the team, but he might be another guy that's a victim in the long run when he's supposed to be getting $13, $14 million at the end of his contract instead of what they were going to get.
I don't think there's any doubt. It's been a poison pill for him, really throughout at least the Brees era. Okay, trying to get that one more championship with Brees. 23 to $28 million in dead money right now, depending on what they're going to do with after March the 9th with I believe the the post-June 1st cuts where they can designate some of these guys, like a Brandon Brown as a post-June 1st cut, which will give them an opportunity to take that dead money and spread it out over 2 seasons. So, you hope you get to the point, you're always going to have dead money, but you hope you get to the point within the next couple years where you're not seeing these double-digit dollars in terms of dead money, which again, when you look at it, it's hurt this team. When you look at the dead money that they've had over the last few years, you're talking 2, 3, 4 players that you could have had on this roster that basically you don't have because basically you're paying guys that are no longer here.
Yeah, and I think one guy that it goes back to certainly is Junior Galette.
Absolutely.
And how you can't predict that. You can't. I wouldn't call that a miss because he was playing great football. At the time when they gave him that contract, it's a year before he had to, but at the same time, the way he was playing and as good as he was as a pass rusher, which they are obviously in need of right now.
They didn't have to do it, though.
That's my criticism.
They didn't have to do it.
He didn't have to do it.
And
that is the criticism.
And they made him a captain.
That's the criticism you make in retrospect, and I agree. At the time,
I
was
made
like,
it at the time. I said they didn't have to do this
even
deal.
at the time, I said, that's a lot of money to do right now.
And he did have issues in the past. I love what he did on the football field, but if you don't have to do the deal, why not let him go through another year? Because we knew he might test the market, but no one's giving him more than that.
Yeah.
But he was still under contract, guys. And what they were fearful of is they looked at Akeem Hicks, they looked at Cam Jordan, they looked at Junior Galette. They said, wait a minute, these guys are playing dynamite. We don't want to have to pay all these guys at the same time, all 3 of them. So ultimately, they tore up the deal, making it more long-term because they were afraid Galette was going to hit his incentives. Man, let him hit the incentives and then worry about it. So, I mean, that kind of backfired on the New Orleans Saints.
I want to say one more thing on dead money because just to put it in perspective, y'all talking about it, the Saints got over $30 million last year. You're saying $23 to $28 million. To put this into perspective, the number 2 team, the Falcons at $15 million. Number 3, the Giants at $9 million. There are several teams that only have $150,000.
No doubt.
This is real. You're losing draft picks as a bounty gate, and like you said, Chris, you're missing 3, 4 quality players because you don't have that $23 to $30,000. You are playing with one hand tied behind your back.
And guys, it all goes back to again, the lifeblood of the organization where they failed miserably with the exception of 2006 and really this year, and that's the draft. They've got now maybe with the change in the front office, we will see a focused team that will go out and again continue to prime the pump with the draft. But that's been the problem. You're going out, you're trying to get one more shot with a free agent, and you're robbing Peter to pay Paul with your existing players, guys that were your core players. And slowly but surely, you've had to let these core players go. I mean, there are a number of players that are still playing in the league right now that could be playing for the New Orleans Saints, but they became salary cap casualties because you used their salaries ultimately to sign other players.
Like we said, I mean, it is playing with one hand behind your back. You just got to hope that they finally put it together and can have a good offseason because, the window's closing.
It is.
You've only got a couple more years and a couple more times that, like we've talked about, you can do this with these guys and keep delaying paying them their money.
Let's head back to the phone lines. 866-3200. Hunter, welcome to the program. Hey, Hunter.
I've got a cold, so if I sound Billy Bullfrog, I'm sorry. I want to say something. This ain't friendly, but it's meant as constructive criticism. What bothers me the most, now I grew up in North Louisiana, which is a different world, as you know. And New Orleans, before in the mid-1800s, this city was richer and bigger than New York City. This city has some history behind it, and, the Battle of New Orleans built the United States. I mean, there are a lot of things about this area historically that are rich. And one of them is the athletics down here. The athletes that you produce in your school, your high school, it's through the roof. Even my friends at Notre Dame up in South Bend talk about it. You've got a lot of talent down here. And it bothers me beyond words that the basketball team and now the pro football team and LSU all are hitting the skids again, all at the same time. It's got to be the guys at the top. It's got to be. What else could it be? It's not the athletes, in my estimation. So that's my comment. I'll let you guys take it.
Thank you, Hunter.
Bye.
Guys, any comment?
I had this discussion about the history of New Orleans today with a guy that didn't really know how big and important we were. But as far as that, I'm not sure what the question was.
Well, the question is it the fault of the front office when you talk about the Pelicans, the Saints, even the LSU Tigers on how they've stubbed their toe so far?
I think so. Like you mentioned, the talent is there. I think it's how using LSU football, for example, I think it's how you use the talent and the talent you're bringing in. They bring in Louisiana, which is great. 9 out of the 10 top guys in Louisiana this year is remarkable for LSU football, but at the same time, they've got depth at receiver, depth at tight end, depth at defensive back. You see it in productions somewhat at defensive back, but you look at wide receiver, and for the life of me, sometimes I can't figure out how they sign somebody when they're not throwing the ball.
I agree.
They get Louisiana's put out some tremendous wide receivers, and you look at these other offenses across the country, like, man, could you imagine so-and-so playing in this offense? Could you imagine so-and-so playing in this offense? So, yeah, that is at the top. And I think with what we saw, at least in the Texas Bowl for LSU, and Cam Cameron coming to the sidelines, and this is it. I think this is the best staff, one of the best staffs Les Miles has had. This is one of the best staffs in the country. It might be the best. So this is it. Yep,
no doubt. Let's grab one more call before the end of the show to Covington and Mike. Mike, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Like y'all's opinion on the LSU women's basketball team, they seem to really fallen from grace. And how much longer do you think Nikki Caldwell will be there before they start wanting to change?
Thank you for the phone call. Chris, you were in Baton Rouge. Your thoughts on the LSU women's basketball team?
Pretty quickly, I don't think it's going to look well for Nikki Caldwell, Nikki Fargas right now. She's had the time there, but she hasn't been able to recruit. The talent that she had the past couple of years is not there because she hasn't brought it in. They're losing games. That program was great in making Final Four runs. They're not doing it anymore.
4 straight Final Fours are where they are now. I hate to talk about coaches getting fired because that's their livelihood, but I can't imagine it being long.
Yeah. Right. Now, I'm with you at this point because, again, you have a legacy of winning at LSU when it comes to women's basketball, and a lot was expected when she came in, and it just has not happened. Guys, finally, as we close out, and you are looking at the LSU Tiger basketball team, do they make the tournament?
I think they make the tournament. I think it's close. I think what they have to do to make the tournament, you've got to beat either Kentucky or Florida. I don't think losing at Kentucky would be the worst thing for them, especially the way the Wildcats seem to have turned it up right now. Beating Florida would be big, and they need to at least, I would like to see them at least make the semifinals for them to be safe.
Yes.
Pete Maravich, no tournament. Shaq never passed the second round. Chris Jackson either. And unfortunately, Ben Simmons won't get past it either, but he will make the tournament.
But they will make the tournament.
Yeah.
Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports, Scott Alexander, WLAE-TV. Thanks so much for being on our panel tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also, you can catch us on Pelican Sports Television, the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets, 9 p.m. every Friday night as well. You can check me out on the radio, 990 AM WGSO, Monday through Friday from 11 to 1. You can listen live on the TuneIn Radio app, also at ericasher.com, where you can download the podcast and every single episode of Inside New Orleans Sports. You can catch those at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to our guests, Chris Hagan and Scott Alexander. Also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Kenny Juneau, Naila Jones, Philip Williamson, and my director, William Hill. New Orleans, thanks so much for watching. We'll check you right back here next Thursday night, 6 p.m. for Inside New Orleans Sports. Have a great evening.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.